Hello, and of course, welcome to another rapid review. We see, as I begin this outside tour, I just want to give a little bit of brief history. So it may not be a rapid review, as it were, but I'm going to try to put my expertise in on this aircraft because I happen to know a lot about it, especially on the, yes, none other than above the aircraft and behind, maintenance side of the PA-38 Tomahawk. I am indeed a licensed aviation mechanic, airframe and power plant certified. A little bit about me as we scroll through looking at the exterior details of these 8K textures provided by none other than JustFlight, of course, and their modeling of the PA-38 Tomahawk, or as many pilots know it as the quote-unquote Traumahawk, for its wild flight characteristics at low speeds and potential capabilities of inducing flat spins. And it's quite the aircraft. I have to say, as we scroll through, I'll let you see everything, and I'll let the textures speak for themselves while I just give that little bit of tidbit on myself. Way back, okay? We're going back decades here. When I took my first flight lesson many decades ago, I thought, how interesting would it be if I could own a plane someday as well as work on the aircraft in an approved method, of course, following all FAA certified guidelines that one as a pilot or maintenance technician would have to abide by in the United States of America to be legal. That being said, I had gone ahead eventually, long story short, and enrolled myself in a place called Aviation Institute of Maintenance. It's located at Northeast Philadelphia Airport, which it still is in effect today in business, at the airfield of Kilo Papa November Echo. That's Northeast Philly. They train, they instruct, they teach flight theory, they go over everything one could imagine. Flight dynamics, theory, air conditioning, hydraulics, cables, cable rigging, everything that makes an aircraft what you fly in the real world, or, I mean, even simulated here, right? It all works on planet Earth. So, upon completion, I would like to say that one of the things that the school had, I don't know if they still have it, but they did have a non-flight worthy Tomahawk. And when we would go down to the hangar, we would get to experience some of the theories by how do you start an engine, what are magnetos, how does a magneto work, how much RPM drop should you have on a left or right magneto, what should the carburetor be like, how to inspect the fuel, when I back up here and I say what should the carburetor be like, I'm talking about settings, fuel flow, stoichiometric mixture ratios, all types of things that apply in theory but were put to practice by us fledgling mechanics at the time in this type of aircraft. As I said, ours was not flight worthy, but it provided the groundwork for those wanting to be maintenance technicians instead of just reading about a book, you can actually see real-life example of what it is to turn over a starter motor, feel the aircraft, listen to the engine run, listen for noises, listen for pretty much the heart and soul of the aircraft, right? And I can tell you, when they call this aircraft the Tomahawk, I have never flown one, but I have an extensive amount of wrench time on these through the school, and they are quite the Tomahawk. To illustrate that, I like to zoom in here to these obvious exquisite textures, and just look at the fitment there, right, of these panel gaps. This is not a detailing error. This is how they legitimately were designed, not intentionally, but how they have aged. That gap is atrocious. And this aircraft, literally, look at the patina and the dirt. Incredible. I mean, look at the tires, look at the textures, look at the specular shine or lack thereof. I mean, even the exhaust, right? Let's go forward and look at the exhaust. Little bit of corrosion there. Look at the strut. Look at the strut, how it's not exactly brand new from factory fresh. This is what we want when we're looking at a Tomahawk. I understand that the flight model on this is quite amazing as well. I have not flown it yet, but we're going to go through this rapid, not rapid review because I want to pay due diligence to this aircraft the way that it deserves in all of its splendor and glory. So we would say. That being said, exteriorly, of course, it's incredible. We would expect no less from JustFlight. We are at November 4-3. This is Braden Air Park in Pennsylvania. It's a DLC airport. It is in the standard game without DLC, but this is quite a nice airport, as it were. I figured small in and out field, very nice for an aircraft like this. Interior-wise, yes, indeed, it's incredible. I know that you are not seeing, okay, there you go, the avionics. This will be, as ironic as it is, such an old aircraft. We've got the GTN 650 and the PMS GTN 750. So that avionics package is extremely expensive in the real world. You can pick up a real world Tomahawk for less than an expensive amount of money. And to have such an avionics panel installed into a Tomahawk is quite literally, in my opinion, blasphemy. Because these aircraft, you're going to spend a considerable percentage on an avionics package like that in an aircraft with a price tag that is not so lofty as to have something like that would be, wow, if money were no object, right? Okay, so that being said, those are the avionics I'm going to be dealing with today, just to show you. I like to show off that, as it were, because they are quite incredible avionics suites. So, as you can see, obviously, the doors open and close for sure. But let's go ahead and hop on inside, and I'll continue the story with this aircraft. Okay, and here we are in the venerable piloting command position on our sweet rocket ship. Speaking about the Tomahawk, of course, this aircraft does come with all kinds of different configurations and settings. It obviously has a wear model, as you may or may not have seen out of the corner of your eye. Through the random condition, you can set all types of wear and tear. You can pick randomize, and it'll change things, as it were. Incredible sounds. Speaking of sounds, they were indeed given proper sound effects, because every noise you hear in this aircraft is indeed an official sound recorded from the real Tomahawk that they have procured the sounds from. So we're not dealing with any generics here. This aircraft was north of $40 off sale, so the price tag justifies the level of detail here, at least interior-wise. I'm sure that it will not disappoint, but we are going to check that out nonetheless in this review. One of the things that the pilot does not have controls of is an autopilot. They have added that in. It is not in a Tomahawk, so just be aware that for ease of access and flight long-haul durations, you can add that here. So, nice little effect in the simulator. To go over, let me zoom out here what we're dealing with. We have the PMS 50. We've got a more standard and in-depth Garmin setup here with menus, sub-menus, all types of information that you can pull out of this. You've got dual GPS here. Of course, we've got the 530 and more iterations. And I'm not sure. I am seeing PMS 50, of course, as you saw. It obviously has to support, don't quote me, but if it did not support the TDS 750XI, I would be shocked. So just keep that in mind. I only have the PMS installed. That could be why it's not detecting anything else, even just like a faceplate for the TDS. But that's okay. There is state savings for it, and I have not tried this yet, but it does support a walk-around. I believe you can actually click things to check the engine is free of rotation. I'm not sure what we can do. Okay, look at that. 100% condition. You can set the tire pressure or check the tire pressure and then refill if low through wear and tear. Let's see here. It's like a walk-around, you know? Nice. Checking on the tires, the wear condition, the PSI. Checking on the stall horning, stall okay. Now, you notice the repair. So, of course, these things can be repaired if they are non-functional. Fuel tanks, US gallons, control surfaces, and you can even hear it hitting the stops. Check to see if they're free and they actually move, right? And I'll make sure that they're not locked up. Gives you the little check and replace and fix, so on and so forth. That's very cool. Check the antennas, check the radio. Just looking for all kinds of click spots here. You can go here. We did not check the other ailerons, but that's okay. So check the engine. Oil quantity, that's cool. Anything out here? I would assume not. Wheels. Okay, cool. So we're going to call that a very brief flight check for safety. And I just wanted to, more than anything else, illustrate the level of that. So if you've got wear and tear state, you've got walk-arounds, and it does burn through oil, and it does need tire pressure adjustments. It really could make you feel as though this were your aircraft. So if you were using it on a regular basis, it would give life to the aircraft and make it feel as though, you know, you were using it and you were abusing it. And the fact that it has the patina that can gradually be added makes it, in my opinion, far more realistic. That's cool, of course. So I want to start this up because I'm anxious to hear what it sounds like, of course. Let's go ahead and turn on the battery and the alternator. We rotated the engine. It seemed like it was free and clear, right? So no obstructions. Naturally, we're going to throw the mixture on, and then I want to bring the throttle forward just a little bit, and I'm going to throw on a fuel pump. That's cool. You can hear the pulsing of the pump, right? Very cool. Interesting indeed. Okay, so to start it up, we are going to, well, first I want to remove those things, of course. We're going to rotate over to both, and then I will turn on just a little bit of lighting so people can see. If we're going to start this, obviously the airport is vacant, but we don't want to strike anybody with the prop. As if with these windows we couldn't see what was going on, right? I mean, look at the view here. That's another thing with this aircraft. The view is incredible. So, all right, let's start it. Or attempt to start it. Aha! As the reviewer does not turn on the fuel supply. Difference in sound, we like that. Of course, with this price tag and through JustFlight, we expect nothing less. I've gone ahead and turned off the auto fuel selector to simulate the realism, of course, which is essentially manually adjusting, right? You want your fuel source where you want it to come from. So yeah, of course, these avionics here are quite the overkill for the aircraft. But I don't know. I like the PMS GTN 750, or just the 750 in general. So yeah, that's my choice of poison today. And that being said, obviously these sounds are exquisite. Indeed. Now, to note, it is stated that this aircraft takes the better part of an hour to get to its ceiling of 13,000, give or take, feet, depending, of course, on weight and, you know, how much fuel you have on board, one passenger, what their weight is, what your weight is. Very nice textures as well. And we're only working with, to my knowledge, just over 100 horsepower. Give or take 112, depending on engine condition in the game and, you know, whatever, real life, of course. So it comes with extra liveries as well. I know I'm throwing in a whole bunch of random information there, but I just wanted to let you know this is indeed a very, very complex aircraft in terms of its study level, in terms of its options, the things that they give you for your money. So that being said, it looks like a relatively nice day. We're going to head east towards the Delaware River. We are on the east coast of the United States. And we're going to cross over that and make a hopeful nice landing at an aircraft that I am also extremely familiar with. That's Kilo Victor Alpha Yankee, South Jersey Regional. Fun, not fun fact, I used to fly radio-controlled airplanes across the street there in a certified field from that airport, which no longer exists. But again, East Coast is my cup of tea because that is what I am familiar with and where I am originally from. So, let's get this thing heated up. I'm going to head out just before we taxi out onto the active, and I'm going to go ahead and bring you back almost instantaneously for you when we are ready to go. Thank you for joining me once again at AOK Games. Okay, so here we are. I've gone ahead and opened the window for the propeller chop noise. We're going to stop short here of the active, and I just want to go over a couple things that I feel like I missed right before we get to the flying. And I did not show you the nav OBS2. You can activate that just about center left of your screen there if you want all kinds of, you know, stated avionics things. We have the 750, which pretty much surpasses everything. But that being said, you can fly legacy style navigation if you want. That's cool. First thing we're going to do here is turn on the pitot heat. We're going to leave the landing lights on. We're not going to go above 10,000 feet because, as stated, with 112 horsepower, we're not going to make it there. We have fuel filled up to the brim, and it's just me today. Let's go ahead and check our weight state here. Of course, just me at 170 with 70 pounds of luggage. In theory, we are at 53.81% of maximum weight. So as you can see, this aircraft is not capable of covering a lot of weight for, you know, takeoff maximums. The thing is, we are going to a place that isn't very far away, as I stated. We are at Braden Air Park, but I want to go to Kilo Victor Alpha Yankee. And we're going to fly approximately 51.3 nautical miles. We're not going to do that all in real time because I want to try to keep this rapid review respectable as much as possible, especially after giving all that exposition about, you know, my previous experience with the Tomahawk in the real world. And I also want to show you that you can turn that off, right? So there you go. You don't have to have that in your view, which is nice. That being said, we're going to fly off the left-hand tank, and we're just going to do the manual switching itself. Throttle friction, nav lights, radio, landing, fuel pump we will throw on now, anti-collision, pitot heat, everything is good. One thing I want to do to illustrate the sound is just go ahead and do a couple cycles of the throttle so that you can hear the inertia that this aircraft engine has. No turbocharging, no supercharging, no gimmicks. It's literally naturally aspirated. Listen to this. Can you hear the sound and feel the weight of that engine? There's a throttle response and then there's an engine response. That, my friends, is a four-cylinder with 112 horsepower. And as we climb, we are going to be losing some portion of that. But I love the fact that the engine feels like it has weight to it. Internal component friction. It's a naturally aspirated gasoline breathing engine, and it feels that way, more so probably than any other aircraft I've experienced in this game. The throttle response in this is absolutely second to none. That is something that you have to feel yourself. It is exquisite. Look at the suspension here doing its thing. That is not me stabbing at the brakes. This aircraft literally feels alive, which is incredible when you consider that this aircraft is literally 112 horsepower and used all around the world as a trainer. It is not a TBM A-50. It is not a military jet. It's not anything other than a Tomahawk. And that is the glory in this beast. Is it going to get you across the country anytime fast? No. But the level of immersion here that I can already feel in the 100 or so feet that we have taxied is second to none. That is something that you just have to feel. I can't explain it other than you have to feel it. You don't even have to watch the rest of the video. I don't even have to fly this airplane, even though I am. I'm just going to tell you that this is 100% worth your time and money, without question. Just in experiencing that on the ground effects. Not to mention the AK textures on the patina that comes with that. I also like how the aircraft is small enough that you can literally see over the dashboard and over the nose. It really gives you a perspective of what you got here. Tomahawk. You can see me in my fighter pilot outfit just in case we need oxygen at 300 feet, because God forbid, you never know. Wow. Listen to the chop of that propeller. Okay, without further ado, I feel like I've been teasing the audience and myself a little bit too much. Let's go ahead and try this bird out, shall we? And that is all you get. Not even 2,500 RPMs. A lot of right rudder here. And we are accelerating at an abysmal rate. Look at that. Almost to the end of the runway. And go ahead and pull off. Woo! Pilot in command is not in control or in command. And it feels all of a light aircraft. Now, normally if you fly faster planes, you're going to feel like, oh my god, my airspeed is so low, I have to be careful. And you do. There's not a lot of horsepower here, as you can see, with 112 horse from the factory, minus wear conditions, right? So, what I am telling you is we are climbing out at 55 knots and actually climbing out at 750 feet a minute. Oh, wow, this aircraft is concerning because this is full power, right? And we're barely maintaining speed. I think 1,000 foot per second, or excuse me, 1,000 foot per minute climb is nothing overly strong. In my opinion, this would be, flaps up by the way, in my opinion, this would be a traumatizing experience. I'm going to go ahead and try to adjust the trim here, as it were, so that we can fly with hands off. And we're just going to keep praying that the engine keeps on running. Now I must state, no disrespect intended. This aircraft, I'm sure, is extremely reliable, especially when maintained well. However, they do have a lifespan on, I believe, the wing. If you have too many total hours or just enough, it will time the aircraft out, and that is an inevitability. So I do believe these aircraft have an expiration date, so to speak. But in the meantime, what can I tell you about this flight model? When I was taking flying lessons, I learned on a Cessna 152, and it was so cramped in there, even as a youngster, that being next to my CFI in the right-hand position, it was cramped. I can tell you the vibes that this aircraft gives right now in the simulator is that of crampiness. 2 adults in here, full fuel load. You would have to be very, very careful with runway length on this aircraft, particularly on sure field takeoffs, on hot days. If you were at, now keep this in mind, if you were at an elevation higher than sea level, you are going to already have been at degraded performance due to lack of air density. So I would assume this aircraft would be extremely dangerous if you're not flying within its approved flight envelope. Something to keep in mind. But that's the patina of this aircraft. That is what you buy a Tomahawk for from JustFlight. The experience. What does it feel like? Well, to be honest with you, it reminds me of when I was a youngster, again, and flying a 152, not really knowing too much to start out, and being in a condition where all of a sudden you're at an altitude that you can't jump out of a plane from, and it's intimidating. It's scary. I feel fully confident in flying anything that this simulator has offered us in terms of DLC, that being Phoenix A320s, Leonardo Mad Dog MD-80s, any of the DLC, and it's all gone according to plan, and smooth for that matter, for the most part. But this aircraft has been so far keeping me on my toes. There is not a lot of room for margin here in terms of performance and envelope of speed. We are at 70 knots indicated, and we're climbing out at just over 500 feet a minute, and we are approaching, well, probably about halfway to the bottom of the cloud base here, and you can see the shaking. This is why I play with zoomed out field of view for my reviews, so that you can see yoke and rudder and throttle input, and you can see what it takes to fly the aircraft and how it's being manipulated. That being said, I'm not putting in a lot of inputs for a lot of this flight so far, and you can see it shimmies and it jostles. This is a light aircraft, and you can absolutely feel that in the flight model. Now, supposedly it takes the better part, as I've maybe stated earlier or not, I'm not sure. This aircraft is traumatizing to me right now. You know, through no pun of my own, of course. It is not the flight model, it is just me feeling the experience here, and it is extremely authentic feeling. I'm not going to waste the time of bringing you to 13,000 feet for the better part of an hour, but I can assure you this aircraft feels like all of 120, or rather 112 horsepower or less. So, short hops, incredible. What an incredible experience. No autopilot, which also adds to the flight complications. If you were to get into a scenario where you were pressed for flying behind the aircraft, as it were, and it essentially gave you drama, and you did not stay ahead of the aircraft, this without an autopilot would absolutely cause problems, or could potentially cause problems, because it's just one less feature that you have at your disposal to make flight easier in the event of an emergency or even just cruising. No time to relax here, and you can feel it. I want to go outside and I want to get some audio from exterior views, so let's do that. Okay, so obviously this aircraft does not have the ability for wing anti-icing or de-icing, as it were. So this would be a VFR aircraft. You could not fly into IFR known conditions with this, or you would possibly be in grave danger. Still at obvious breathable altitudes. So let's open this up for some sound. Now, as I stated before, this aircraft has the innate ability, or lack thereof, with control. I believe it's 35 knots indicated to go into a nose-high tailspin if you were attempting to practice your stalls, and you could indeed, because of the flight dynamics of the aerodynamics of this aircraft, inherently has through design to literally cause yourself a flat spin. I am not going to attempt that today. There are JustFlight videos on YouTube for you to check that out, because I literally do not want to make an ass out of myself. If this aircraft is indeed known around the world as the Tomahawk, one thing that I would not intentionally do, in a simulator for that matter, or in reality, is attempt anything that would cause potential death. So, unless you had a reason to perform a stall and attempt to get into a flat spin, it would not be something that I would do for fun. So we're just going to leave that portion of the review out today, in fears of me embarrassing myself, as well as I would not want to put my airframe under that kind of stress regardless if it can be done or not. So as you can see, we've got 39.8 nautical miles, and we're roughly on the magenta line, a little bit right of it, and we're heading towards Delaware River, aka Jersey, and we are cruising at the bottom of the white arc there. I'm trying to keep the aircraft trim and stable and level, hands off control, but you know, the experience here is that of a light aircraft, and the immersion is absolutely all there. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and turn off the fuel pump at this point. We're not going sub 10,000 feet. There's a cloud layer, so we're going to leave our landing lights on. Everything else is A-okay. That being said, once I get a little bit closer to the airport, we'll just do the supercut here, and I'll get you all right back for that final approach. See you in just a brief second. Okay, and welcome back. We are descending out of 6,000 foot indicated, and we are heading to the same location, of course, Kilo Victor Alpha Yankee. We are approximately 7.2 miles, and in closing, this is, of course, an aircraft that is personal to me through the aviation maintenance school, as well as an airport that's close to me in terms of I've landed here in real life many times through my flights with the CFI, and it's a very long, nice runway. They have, coincidentally, a aircraft museum there, or at least they did back in the day. I worked at Kilo Victor Alpha Yankee for a brief time as an aircraft refueling technician. That was quite a job, did not last long, because that was a transient time in my life where I was just setting myself up for a lifetime of aviation experience. But again, just a little bit more useless information about moi. And we're going to pull the power back a little bit. And I'm absolutely fascinated by listening to the whistle off of the propeller there. What a cool sound package this aircraft is complemented by. I mean, wow. Based off of sounds alone, I don't care if you sit this aircraft on the tarmac and just listen to it. It's worth it, just from that perspective. Of course, we're descending at, well, about 90, 95 knots. True airspeed, or indicated. And that's fast for this aircraft, I believe. I'm not sure in level flight if we could reach that anyway. So you're thinking, man, this is just a tad bit faster than an automobile on your average highway. And you would be correct. The only difference is this aircraft can fly in straight lines. But is it a time saver? I'll let you be the judge of that. Certainly offers the appeal of views that an automobile cannot offer, even though the indicated airspeeds here are not much higher than your average automobile, at least in the legal sense. 3 miles away, and we are still chipping off some mileage there on our GTN. Does not go fast in this aircraft, but again, that is the patina of what we're dealing with here. It is very neat. KVAY coming up now on the GTN, just on the bottom portion of the screen in magenta. And we are essentially flying almost into a T with the pattern here. We are going to be flying, making a left-hand turn, and then we're going to be performing a right base. You can see right off of the nose there, just above the nose is the runway and the tarmac. And this aircraft is buffeting quite a bit with the winds here, thermals. I fly with real-world weather, so this is probably, hopefully, fairly accurate for us to judge the flight characteristics, as they are undoubtedly fairly I don't want to say realistic or accurate, because I am not a real-world Tomahawk pilot, but I can tell you they are extremely lively. I know it doesn't look like, and I'm not putting in a lot of input commands to the aircraft, but it 100% is a very active aircraft to fly for sure. I can just feel it through the inputs. We're going to go sub-white arc and throw in a little bit of flaps just to try to stabilize some of that buffeting while we turn base. And we're a little bit high, but that's okay, because I am currently trimming out the aircraft so that we can have a nice experience. You notice over there, right off of our nose, that's Flying W. That's November 1-4. I also worked there in the general aviation field for a short time on GA aircraft, so I am very familiar. I've landed there as well as here at Kilo Victor Alpha Yankee. Again, like I said, this is indeed my old stomping grounds, so it's a pleasure to fly this here. Kind of reminds me of the old days. And we have a long runway, but we're super high. That's okay. If we have to do a go-around, it adds to the authenticity of not everything goes right in the real world the first time. But it just gives us more time to experience the aircraft, right? Of course, they'd be looking at me and saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing? This pilot is a nut." And we have more than enough room to land. And very light on the wheels for sure, as expected. It is a very, very active aircraft to fly. I will tell you that. That was my first landing. Not beautiful. Came in high, came in fast. But in terms of reality, I think it's important to bring the audience out there with this rapid review, the actual procedure, and not refilm anything. And what I can tell you about this aircraft right off of that landing, it's white knuckles, right? It would have been a little bit more mundane and sedate had I did a going around or actually did an appropriate approach into this airport. But I think that summarizes essentially what we're dealing with here, aka no fault of its own, lack of piloting skills on my behalf, no experience. That was my first flight, that was my first landing. The Tomahawk white knuckle experience, absolutely. This is an aircraft that I feel you have to stay on top of, even though it doesn't have a very high speed. It's got very quirky stall characteristics. It's got a low speed for cruise. It's got a low speed for a climb. Very reasonable climb rate. Lot of flap input. You can see the flaps there. A lot of flaps. So you can fly low and slow with this. That's the cup of tea here. This is not an aircraft you would go from San Francisco to Honolulu in, obviously. But if you're looking for short hops and you're looking for genuine character, no autopilot, old school navigation perhaps, with a mix of modern avionics, whatever your cup of tea, for short duration flights, this, my friends, is your choice. For sure. You cannot beat these sounds. You cannot beat that flight model. And we're not competing because there are many, many excellent products we have at our disposal these days in terms of DLC. So, this is not to compare oranges to oranges or oranges to apples. I'm just giving you the official opinion that I have on the aircraft, or unofficial, and I think it's amazing. If you haven't already bought this, all I have to say is, what are you waiting for? You know, dare I say, this is incredible. I know I'm gushing here, but I have been waiting for this, as many of you obviously more than likely have been waiting for it for a long time, and I can tell you the wait is obviously over, and it is worth the price of admission. For sure. So we're going to go ahead and park this up, and I'm not even going to leave any final thoughts because this is release day version. If there are bugs here, if there are problems, I have not experienced any, and I should suspect that you will indeed appreciate this aircraft. The level of simulation white knuckling here is incredible. So keep that in mind. Is it easy to fly in a straight line? Yes, it is indeed, though, a lot to handle for the landing, I feel, more so than anything. It is not a vanilla aircraft to fly, meaning generic. So just keep that in mind. Let's turn it off. There you go. The rattle of the engine on the shutdown in the cabin. The gyros, if you can hear them. The gyros that are still spinning on the instruments. Let's turn it off.